For my grandfather. I think she was in school yet. That would have been Philip Lehner Sr. And then she was with my father when they were practicing. And then when I came, she was also in the office. And so that is kind of remarkable when I saw that this morning and saw her picture in there. That brought back a lot of memories. Now, I wasn't going to tell an attorney joke, but I guess I'm going to when I see some of the people here. They half expect it, so here it goes. There were three people. One was a Hindu priest, another was a Jewish rabbi, and then a lawyer. And the three of them traveled from place to place talking about how you need to get along. You can be diverse, you can have different opinions, and yet still get along and make progress. And so what they did is, again, put on presentations talking about this. Well, they were driving back one night. It was very late. It was a Sunday night, and their car broke down. And it broke down out in the country. Sunday night, couldn't get anywhere, couldn't get any help, and there was an old farmhouse there, and they went to the door and told them their problem, and the farmer said, well, you can stay here, but I only have room for two of you to stay in the house. The third has to stay out in the barn. And well, no problem. All three of them said that was acceptable, and of course the Hindu priest says, well, I'll go out there. And so he went out and stayed in the barn, and a few minutes later, just a little tap, tap, tap on the door, and the farmer goes, and it was a Hindu priest, and he said, you know, there's a cow out there, and they're very sacred to us, and I just feel more comfortable if maybe I could stay. And the Jewish rabbi immediately said, I'll go, you know. So he went out there, and a few minutes later again, a little tap, tap, tap at the door, farmer goes there, and it's the Jewish priest indicating, you know, there's a pig there, and I'm kosher. Right away the attorney said, I'll go, it's not a problem. So the attorney went out there. 30 seconds later, bam, 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 on the door. Farmer thought that door was going to be blown open. Opened the door, there was the cow and the pig. So in any event, we got that out of the way. But it really is a pleasure to be here and talk to you folks. Just having that video eliminated a lot of what I had to say. And again, just so you know, that is donated here. You can use it as you see fit.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'm sure it's going to go onto our website so that people can very easily access it.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
So I just wanted to say some of my earliest recollections of growing up in Princeton. I was born in 1950, and I went to kindergarten, and it was a Mrs. Lang that taught me, and the kindergarten was in the basement of the community hall. And from there, my first 4 years was at the school in the Triangle parking lot, and then by the time I was in 5th grade, then the new school was built, and that's where I attended and graduated there in 1968. Graduated from University of Wisconsin with a Bachelor of Science degree in 1972, and then Marquette Law School in 1975, and immediately came back here to practice law. That's kind of my biography in a nutshell. But I think back, you know, some of my early remembrances, and you people, I'm sure many of you are going to have a clearer picture than I do of some of these things. I can think back that my father's first office, and that's actually where my grandfather's first office was too, it was above what is a chiropractor's office right now. It was on the 2nd story. It was, I guess, the Princeton State Bank before that. And my recollection was going up those steep steps into that office. I think on the lower floor it might have been a restaurant, Hollenbach Restaurant maybe, if I'm correct on that. So that's one of my earliest remembrances of going up to my dad's office and Grandpa's office. And then it moved over to almost right next door here. Hannah Barger's studio was there, and I'm sorry I can't recollect who was in there right now. But then I also remember going to the bank, the Farmers and Merchants Bank, when it was in the building on the corner 501 Water Street. And you know, I can remember the bars and the tellers and everything were back there. And then our neighbor, Dr. Miller, Gus Miller, his office was up on the top. And I can remember going on the sidewalk and going all the way up those stairs. They go, well, what if somebody is sick? How are they going to get up there? You know, I started getting hooked a little bit on some of these old Gunsmoke shows. Doc Adams' office is up there. And, you know, how in the world? But you know what? They made house calls then. And I can remember, you know, if I was sick, you know, Doc Miller came over, and that was just kind of one of the things that happened there. One of the things that I remember about Doc Miller, now it's a little bit older, and I'm in high school. Jerry, you might remember my sophomore year, I busted my arm playing football. And so just laying on the field, and they called, you know, for a doctor, and he came, Gus came, right up in the car, right next to me, and he asked the trainer, well, God, give me a splint. Well, the trainer didn't have any. He said, what kind of outfit is this? You don't have a splint? So he goes into his car, he opens up the trunk, he had a carton of cigarettes, he opened it up, the packs were flying like this, and he used that carton of cigarettes with an ace bandage. That's how he splinted my arm. And from there, yeah, then I was driven, you know, my mom drove me to St. Agnes and Fond du Lac, and remember the roads back then, oh my gosh. You know, you went through Green Lake, not around Green Lake, and you know, I'm just dying there. You know, it's so slow. And then between Green Lake and Ripon, that road was so bouncy. It was, again, before the present highway is there, and oh boy, those were just some quite the memories there. I can remember getting haircuts here. I'd go often right across the street to Keeneman's, and I liked going there because when I was done, he'd give me a candy bar. But then I also went to, I think it was Carby, was that? Okay. I liked going there even more because I was starting to get into fishing, and he'd let me have a fishing lure, you know, after each one. So I went to there. I know Tiff was over here too, but I went, you know, between those two because, you know, the packaging was better. Okay, then, oh, I can remember making cigars. There was a cigar factory where the laundromat is right now. I think that was run by, it was Ed Miller, I think it was, and he had a brother too that worked in there. But my dad at that time smoked cigars, and so they taught me how to roll it. You know, it was you put it in, and you had this deal, you pull back sort of like an old adding machine, and so they taught me how to make a couple of cigars for my dad, and I did that. But being the prankster even way back then, every now and then I'd put a load in, so when he'd light it, you know, he didn't like that too much, but that was it. And one of my earlier family remembrances, and some of you are going to like this because you know my sister Sally and her deceased husband Bill Eichelman. So they're dating, and I'm quite a bit younger. I'm 7 years younger than my sister Sal, 10 years younger than my sister Betsy. But Mom and Dad were gone, and Sally had to babysit me, and Bill came over, and they sent me up to bed then. So I was in bed, and I thought I'd sneak down, and I sneaked down the steps and I looked. They were kissing. And I go, Sally, I'm going to tell Dad that I caught you kissing. And she goes, I'll give you a quarter if you don't. And I said, okay. So she gave me the quarter. Come down the next morning, we're at the breakfast table, and you know, we're all there, and I look at my dad and I say, Dad, I know something you don't know. And he says, what is that? And I said, well, I can't tell. But Mike, you can tell your father anything. I'm your father, you know. And Sally's glaring at me. And so I said, well, Dad, I came down, I sneaked down, and I saw Sal and Bill kissing. And Sally says, I want my quarter back. And my dad said, did she give you a quarter not to tell me? And I said, yes. Do you have that quarter? I said, yes. We'll give it back to her because you told me. And I did that, and then he turned around and he gave me $1. So, you know, you never know what's going to go on in the Lehner household. So, a couple of things, you know, many of you know, obviously from that paper, that in my retirement, I have a great retirement gig of captaining the Escapade, a tour boat on Green Lake. And one of the public tours is a Saturday afternoon public tour, and it's about an hour and a quarter long. I can cover about 2/3 of the lake, but I'm doing a narration almost the whole time. And I'm just going to give you an outline kind of what I cover there. And when I first get in the boat, it's really the geology, the formation of the Big Green Lake. And then we go along, and there's the first house that is of interest. It's a prairie-style home designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. We're actually an associate of Frank Lloyd Wright, but he actually did visit that home right on Illinois Avenue. Go down a little bit further, I talk about the Oakwood Lodge Resort. That was the first resort on Green Lake, opened in 1866, which made it the first summer resort west of Niagara Falls. Then talk a little bit about the Puckian River, how the water exits. Then you have the Angel Inn, which is an example of Greek revivalist architecture. And then I have a period of time where I do talk about the early French explorers that came through, and Jean Nicolet being the first, of course, to see Big Green Lake, and the succeeding French explorers after that. Then we're coming to the shores of what is called the Green Lake Conference Center. Used to be called the American Baptist Assembly, but there's so much history there. There's so much to talk about from the earliest. Well, from I'll just tell you a little bit about the very first part of that timeline. I'll take you back to 1887. There was a man named Victor Lawson that chartered a boat that was on Green Lake there, and a storm came up, just a tremendous storm, and they had to get off the lake in one hurry. And you know, you don't have motors on those boats at that time, you know, they're basically sailboats, and they came in by what is now where the Roger Williams Inn is. It's called Lone Tree Point, and they found safe harbor there. But he just loved that area, so he took his wife there either later that year, but in 1888 they bought the first 10-acre parcel there that covered Lone Tree Point and where the Roger Williams Inn is, and then kept buying succeeding contiguous properties till it amassed an estate of 1,100 acres. But this guy was interesting. He was the son of a Norwegian immigrant. He was the editor of the Chicago News. He was the co-founder of the Associated Press. So he had the wealth, you know, to do a lot, and he married Jessie, who also came from an extremely wealthy family, and they developed that 1,100 acres. and then I can go into the rest. I go into a lot of the other things that you can see right there. Then we cross the lake, and of course, we're in over 200 feet of water, and that's when I tell the people that I was a lawyer, because I figure they're less apt to jump ship when we're in the middle of the lake in 200 feet of water. We get on the other side, and you know, oh, there is also on Sugarloaf Point, it's now owned by the Ryan family, and embedded in that family tree is Paul Ryan, you know, former congressman from Janesville, former Speaker of the House, former vice presidential candidate on the Mitt Romney ticket. He doesn't have an ownership in that spot, but he's there often for family reunions and for weddings of the like. Then you get on the other side and you have Michael's Pipeline folks, and oh, I almost forgot before we get there, go by Craig Culver's house. When I get there, I say to everyone, "Welcome to Delicious." You know, how he starts his commercials. And I can tell you right now that in the last 2 months, the Green Bay Packer head coach has bought a summer home on Green Lake. And I do not tell the people its location. We kind of hear through the grapevine. Us attorneys call this multiple hearsay, but we have heard that they came here because they want to escape some of the notoriety that you have in Green Lake, you know, that celebrity status, and they wanted to have an area and the opportunity for their sons to go tubing, learn how to water ski, enjoy the water without everyone at their pier, you know, with their phones taking pictures and that sort of thing. So I have made the decision that, yes, during the cruise I mentioned that he just bought the summer home, but I refuse to give the location. And it's just to respect their privacy a little bit. And but, you know, that'll get out eventually too. So then finishing up the cruise, we come to the sand. It's called Woods Bay, but it's where Sandstone Point is, if you're familiar with Green Lake. And that's the area where the Winnebago Native Americans congregated mainly. They worshiped the great water spirit there. It was a very deep spot off of Sandstone Point. You can see both the sunrise and the sunset from the same place. It's a very important religious and ceremonial spot for the Winnebago. At any one time, there would be 500 to 1,000 encamped along the shore there, and it was incumbent upon them once in their lifetime to go to that spot like a pilgrimage to worship the great water spirit. And then I talk more about that on the cruise, and then come back across the lake back to Heidel House where we take off from. And another story, I call it the coincidence of all coincidences, but I'm not going to tell you that story. But it was fun. So that's what I'm doing in my retirement. And you know, speaking of the lake, Princeton had an area on Green Lake that was called the Princeton Cottages. And I just touched on the fact that a few years ago we celebrated the 100th anniversary of that property being in our name, but I'll just go down the line of who stayed, whose places they were, and a lot of you, especially the natives in this area, are going to know who they are. Okay, I'm starting from the west going east. Art Litke, he ran the meat market here. That's where Dover Street is, the store right now. Then the next one would have been Mavis. Was that his first name? Okay, Ed, you know, that was the next one. Then the next one is Dr. G.G. Miller, Gus Miller, we've talked about him. Next one would have been ours. Then the one after that is Lang, and I'm not sure what he did.
Feed store.
Feed store? Okay, all right. And it was his wife that was my kindergarten teacher. The one after that would have been Cryle Camp, that he was the superintendent of the schools. One after that would have been Heaston, Press's dad. Is that Erna? Yeah, okay. And then further on down the line, Dr. Drill. And it's amazing, there's still family connections. You have on the Miller side right now, it's I think the third or fourth generation. That would be Craig Miller that still owns it and rents the property out. Karen helped me with just
Which
down the
direction
line.
look like?
Yeah. Next.
Lang.
Lang, yeah, okay, there's Lang from,
It's in Lang,
that's
wasn't
in the Ripon area. The Cryle Camp, his would be granddaughter, who's a retired Army nurse, is still there, and of course Jane Balthazar is still at that spot. So that's pretty interesting, and I can remember growing up, we attended the Little White Church here, and every year we had our church summer picnic out between the Mavis, the Miller, and our cottage. You know, we were all next to each other, and that's where we had the picnic. And then I'm just gonna end up with one of the stories that I tell on the escapade, which was really the worst. People ask me, what's the worst thing that ever happened on this lake? What's the worst tragedy? And it's a no-brainer, it's an easy one. It happened July 4th, 1873. There was a group of folks from the temperance movement, those that were against the consumption of alcohol, and they were going to go from they were on the north side of the lake, and they were going to go on the south side where they were going to have a huge picnic. And so there was one large schooner called the Hershaw that could hold 22 people. It was a big schooner, and you know a lot of people were on that boat, 22, and it was towing some other boats. Remember, we don't have motors here now. You know, this is 1873. And then there's another big yacht called the Ripon Girl that had 17. And there were a lot of other, and that towed some boats, and there were a lot of other little sailboats and other boats on the lake. And some of the people by buggy went around the lake, you know, they didn't go on it. But a tremendous storm came up. And two of the local papers called it a tornado, a third called it a squall. But it came up so fast they couldn't get off the water fast enough, and the mast on the Hershaw broke, and it got swamped. Other boats got turned over, and long story short, it was tragic in that 10 people drowned in that horrible accident. And it was fun, you know, because Laura, I was telling her that in the winter, and we found the newspaper article in the Princeton paper about that, and I had been given information on it for my cruise from the Ripon Historical Society. And the first 3 names on the list of the 10 deaths were from Princeton. There's 2 sisters, and one of the sisters had a lonely child, a daughter. And you read the article that was in the Princeton paper about that, and it was, I guess I'd say it's dripping with emotion. I mean, I go, boy, this is really some, you know, some reporting. And it turned out that the editor of the Princeton paper, it was his 2 sisters and niece that had perished in that accident. So, and I didn't know this stuff like this. It's just amazing how you can read and you can come up with some of these things. So that's kind of what I remember. Sometime again, if you want to have me back, I can touch on any of those subjects that I talked about on the boat, but I think we've talked long enough, and I want to thank you, and I love all the work that's being done here, preserving the history of Princeton.
One question, Mike.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
open it up for questions if you don't mind.
Goofy one, if you remember
Yeah.
getting snowbound out there.
Yes, I do. When he's, yeah, Jerry, you were with us, okay. Jerry and I were in the same class, and it,
I cooked all the meals.
yeah, oh God, this is a story. Then our cottage back then, it was a private road, you know, it didn't get plowed out, and so it was in Christmas, and Jerry, and then it'd be Bob Frost, maybe Norm Benaric, and we got snowed in. And so we hiked across the field to John's place, and he got we got some food and provisions, and we're trudging through the snow, and we come back, and so that gave us just enough sustenance until someone got a tractor and could get us plowed out days later. But this you don't know. I got in trouble again. We had venison, a lot of the venison hamburger, and it was frozen. And so we had it in a pot, and we just put it in the oven just on warm to thaw out. And we went outside and we shoveled, and by then it's either Norm or you or someone broke through with the tractor, and we were so excited we all took off, and we got back into town. 2 weeks later, my mom and my sister went into the cottage. They thought someone had died. We forgot to take the venison out of the oven, and it was on warm for 2 weeks. I think that was the last time I was allowed to have buddies at the cottage.
However, I do remember that we got lamb chops from your place.
Oh.
And I never had lamb chops before, and I didn't really know how to cook it, but it was the best tasting meat. For some reason.
Any other questions or?
Just a comment.
Sure.
You maybe skipped over it or something, but that metal box that says E.H. Mavis on it,
Uh-huh.
he and your father and my father were instrumental in leaving that schoolhouse behind.
Uh-huh.
They were all on a school board together
Right.
and building the new school out on the edge of town.
Sure, yeah. I'm aware of that. Okay.
Somebody in the band.
Oh, yes, Dan.
Well, we used to have a cottage out there, my grandpa did, Barney Frisbee and Mary, and I guess they were doing wallpapering and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what was so nice is that I used to spend the summer there pretty much, and at the cottage, and your mother and Mrs. Miller, they always had pops for us. And your mother was the nicest lady I've ever known. She never spoke badly about anybody that ever existed. And what was so amazing about that, you probably don't know Billy Wise, but Billy Wise was my grandmother's brother, and he drove her nuts. He owned that whole shore originally, and he used to sell lots off to Grandpa for $50, and that's why you got those 50-foot lots out there. And he got into the moonshine business too. And my grandma she was so disgusted with him she could hardly talk. Anyway, that had awful nice people there. And then there was a Greek couple. I don't know if you.
Vervolius.
They're from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And they were right there where we had our boats.
Mm-hmm.
You had to in the spring you had to let the water flood for a while so you could use the boats.
Sure.
But it was wonderful. But your parents were wonderful people.
Thank you.
And we used to go over with your dad and groups from Princeton. We'd go over to Kingston, and they had a private lake there, and we'd have about 20 or 30 couples from Princeton that would do this on an annual basis. It was very, very nice. It was a little, the county owns that property today, but it was like a private party. I think the Army shelter. But anyway, we had a lot of wonderful people here. We had 29 taverns, and it was quite interesting. The other thing that was interesting during that time, during the time that we had gangsters, the sheriff shot off shotguns to people in town here, the men. If they had gangsters coming here, they'd never forget the experience. And of course, that was kind of an interesting thing. I think in our day and age where we got these people that like to steal a store, I think a sawed-off shotgun with rock salt was solved. That family, I thought was the nicest family. We were right across from my grandmother. And it was fun. And we had some darn good teachers in those days.
Sure.
Our schools were very, very fun. good things, man.
I could remember, it's kind of a testament as to what we're going through right now with the polarization in politics. Because I can remember the last time my dad ran for mayor, he ran against Harry Miller. Harry Miller ran against him in the same church, you know, and yet there were some different opinions. My dad ended up winning that election by 1 vote. But they had an agreement, you know, they remained friends, they had an agreement that whoever won the election would take the other one and their wife out for dinner. And that happened, you know, I can remember that. My mom and dad picked up Harry and Dorothy Miller, and they went out to Barnacles and had dinner together, you know, after an election. I mean, that, got to bring. Right, so in any event, you know, that's kind of the good old days. Now I look at this, now I think too, oh boy, it'd be so great, good old days. I just love to do that. And I went through a medical museum in Prairie du Chien, and then I came across a 19th century dental office, and I go, no, I'll take today's modern dentistry and that sort of thing. So, anyone else? All right.
I want to thank you again, Mike. I
Sure.
just remember reading in here that you, one year you actually donated your tips to the Princeton Historical Society.
That's
So
right. Mhm.
we so appreciate several times. Okay. So anyway, we really appreciate that. We appreciate you coming and sharing your story here with us. And I forgot to introduce your lovely wife, Karen.
She is. She is. If you kind of ever saw that paper, when she's with me, she comes with me quite often on the escapade, and I introduce her as my first mate. But I say she's not just my first mate, nautically speaking. She's my real first mate of 51 years. So there she is.
Well, could we get a picture of the two of you with all the people in the background here?